Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's I'm good ready. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon. Joining me again this week, Mr. Regret the Van. How are you doing today?
I am doing a lot better than I expected to be.
Yeah, it's kinda odd. You and I have both been dreading for like the past... It feels like we've been dreading for doing this topic for a month, even though it only came out 2 days ago. And
yeah, it came out, everybody freaked out, and we can't find solid evidence on this topic.
So, this is pretty much the tech topic of the week, though a few outlets had the brains to ignore it, as they should have. And it's the U.S. Senate votes to rescind internet privacy rules that were enforced by the FCC. What little I could find is that the joint resolution, that's the word. The joint resolution was to stop the rules the FCC did put out and then stop FCC from implementing any more rules of, quote, net neutrality, and supposedly push us over to the FTC. But that's all I could find. And I can't find any confirmation that's actually what it is.
Yeah. One of my usual sources that I turn to for such things, which is the Electronic Freedom Front... I'm horribly butchering it. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, which usually has very comprehensive articles on such legal things in the tech world, has a very disappointingly short article on this.
And that's mostly what I've been finding too, is roughly about the same 2 or 3 paragraphs. Now, this particular article I pointed out from PC Gamer, which I'm not sure what business PC Gamer has in talking about this in particular. It makes about as little sense as CNET talking about doomsday clocks, which has happened. And even this article provides like maybe 1 or 2 articles, or one or two paragraphs, and the rest is just opinion piece. And of course, you know you're dealing with a quality article when the first sentence of the article can't even be said on TV or radio.
Yep.
So, we're going to be keeping an eye on this, as much as I really don't want to talk about it, but I'm more doing it out of curiosity as to see what is going to happen. Because a lot of people are saying it's just like, okay, well, everything's going to be up for sale, your porn information's going to be up for sale, and all this because they're sending this, and it's just like, well, it wasn't for sale before, so why would it be now? There's a lot of this that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, one of the things that was brought up, and it's when this was that certain groups would happily pay for this information to make other people miserable. For example, a school teacher would be fired because they viewed porn at home. That sort of situation. But we have no evidence to go on if names are even associated with the data that's sold. For all we know, this bill could just simply could simply act as if how Google currently sells your ad information, which is just an anonymized number that is, quote, you. Well, it's actually just your hardware.
The other thing that seems odd to me is the fact that it did get through in the Senate with very little resistance. Yeah, it passed only on party lines. The 48 Democrats passed it, 50 for it, 2 unaccounted for. There might have been some crossovering there. But the thing that also tells me that's nowhere near as bad as people are saying is the fact that there was no filibuster.
Yeah, that is Democrats are in a position that if they wanted to, they could have filibustered the thing.
Yeah, nothing's stopping them. They could have said filibuster, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we tried out of 10, and then moved on to something else.
So either this bill is not as bad as it's made out to be, or it's pretty much just saying, well, it's reaffirming what the industry already does.
Yeah, so again, there's not a whole lot of information. I wouldn't panic about this at all. Unlike these guys, CNET, and about 3 other places that I can't remember off the top of my head that just wrote angry letters and called them articles.
Yeah, it was all over Imgur the other day, left and right. It was.
I'm sure it was all over Twitter, but I just can't convince myself to have political opinion pieces end up in my Twitter feed, so I've done everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. Unlike my Facebook feed.
Well, Facebook is just kind of a hole that you just kind of look at and go, my God, is it full of excrement.
4chan is less toxic.
Yes.
I still stand by that statement. I still can't believe I can stand by that statement, by the way. Which really just makes you wonder what Facebook's future is. Let's actually get to a topic that we do have information on. And that's a new WikiLeaks dump that mainstream news just kind of ignored. Granted, there's good reason for it. The leak... Go on.
Pretty much this leak is, well, news is non-news. The leak details exploits that have long since been fixed.
The funny thing is that in this particular case, the leaks the leaks entail what sort of exploits the CIA was using to get into iPhones and Macs. Now there was a situation not long ago where the CIA was extremely desperate to get into a certain iPhone, and for good reason. And it was a fantastic little controversy of which side do you stand on, and I honestly couldn't pick one. Because you can kind of feel for the security of Apple, and you could also kind of feel for the CIA going, look, man, we have a terrorist phone here, and you're sealing it off, and we need the information like yesterday.
Yeah. No, that one was actually pretty divisive, because I actually went, I'm sorry, CIA, you do have to go through the legal channels. If the city of San Bernardino screwed up, then... sorry, you don't get to jeopardize everybody else's phones for this.
Well, they still were going through the legal channels, but but at the same, I mean, the CIA was doing everything right. At the same time, Apple was also doing everything right.
Yeah, so
they were both.
So who's wrong?
No one. And that's the infuriating part of that particular situation. No one was wrong. So yeah, to the surprise of no one, the CIA was abusing iPhone and Mac exploits to collect information, things that the CIA does. And these are not news because these exploits have been long since fixed because as terrible as this sounds, ever since Steve Jobs has no longer been at the helm of Apple, Apple has actually cared about their security. And I feel terrible for saying that. But while Steve Jobs was at the helm, it would take Apple months to fix a security exploit. Heck, it would take them weeks to even acknowledge that an exploit existed. But the real newsworthy thing here is the fact that this isn't newsworthy.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that this comes out, and WikiLeaks was building up. That's like, oh, we have tons of stuff. We have tons of stuff on the CIA. This thing drops, and it's just like, oh, okay, you got nothing.
Yeah. As the article points out, as any security expert will tell you, once you gain physical access to a device, nearly all bets are off. This is a long-standing maxim. This is why you can make your passwords as strong as hell, and if they can get to the machine, get to the hard disk, forget it. Those passwords are worthless. Everything's worthless.
I believe in the words of Hack 5, that's hacker rule number 3. Once you have the physical machine, all bets are off.
Yeah.
That's actually something I haven't checked up on in a while. I need to see what they've been up to. So, with that, let's move on to news that actually was news.
Yes, this thing. I am looking forward to talking about it.
All right, I'll leave it to you, and let's.
Whoops! Sorry, not that.
Whoops. Yes, the passengers hit by airline cabin laptop ban. I've been seeing a lot of articles. I've been going through a lot of different sides on this one.
That's... Okay, what is the cause for this ban?
Alright, so... I've actually been hearing about this quite a bit throughout the week. What this is that, depending on who you asked, this ban is because there was intel gap. All right, let's first talk about the ban. What the ban actually is that if you are traveling from, I believe it's 9 different airlines within the Middle East, if you're traveling from those to either the US, the UK, or Canada, because those 3 countries have issued the same ban, you are not allowed to carry a laptop or tablet in the actual cabin. You can still have it in cargo. I believe you can also still have it in a carry-on bag, but... Oh, wait, no. I don't think you actually can have it on a carry-on bag.
No, I think it just says that, all large bigger gadgets, including Kindles and other e-readers, will have to go into the luggage holds of the aircraft.
Yeah. The reason for this is that, and this is unconfirmed information, but quite a few people are running with it, so there's some truth to it. There was a raid that was initially planned out by the Obama administration and then greenlit by the Trump administration that went south.
Yes.
It didn't go as well planned, but there was rumored information that there was information that was rumored to have been gathered from that. Part of that was that certain terrorist organizations have figured out how to store a bomb in the laptop compartment. And that's why this ban was put into place. Which,
for those countries, actually makes a lot of... This is a reasonable thing. We have this information. This is a reasonable reaction to that information. Because think about the space inside of a laptop shell. If you completely gut it and replace that entire interior with explosives, that'd be well more than enough to bring down an airplane. It doesn't take much. The questionable thing is putting it in a hold. I'm not sure if that... Unless these airlines operating in these countries have reinforced cargo holds that if a bomb goes off, it just pretty much blows out a panel on the underside, I'm not sure how much good that's going to do.
I think they were mainly looking for a happy medium sort of area to enforce. Because let's say you go over and visit, I don't know, let's say Israel. Let's say you go over and visit Israel and do some sightseeing. Yes. To then come back and then let's say you were an idiot and took all the pictures on an iPad. Which, by the way, I am judging you if you take all of your pictures with an iPad.
Yeah.
Or any tablet, for that fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then to say just flat out ban it, no, I'm sorry, you can't take this on the plane, it's gotta stay here in Israel forever. That's gonna raise a lot of anger. And justifiably so. At least this is a happy medium rather than just saying, alright, let's just let the potential bomb onto where all the passengers are.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, what else can you say?
It is pretty much that. It is a very reasonable precaution.
The interesting thing, though, is that a lot of these articles are neglecting to report that the UK and Canada are also enforcing the same ban.
Mm-hmm.
They are only stating that the US is. And I do think the fact that Canada and the UK enforce this as well is a very important detail here.
Yeah, it lists in this article that Britain has also announced a parallel ban effective today, targeting all flights out of Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, and Lebanon.
I think that's actually more than the one that the US is. I mean, granted, I'm trying to go off what I remember when this story was hot, which was like the beginning of the week. No, it was Tuesday.
Mm.
It feels like an eternity ago. This week just went slow.
Yeah, it did.
Let's move on to something.
Also, loving that retro Dell in the picture.
Oh yeah, what is that? A Latitude 600?
Something.
I mean,
yeah.
I want to say that's a Pentium 3 based one, or it's a Pentium 4 Mobile M.
It might be the Mobile M because the 3 has the green dots. Or
Yeah.
I'm not seeing green dots on that. So, but yeah, loving that retro Dell.
The funny thing is that actually, the funny thing is actually in, like, let me just compare to like this one. I'm holding in my hand right now a Dell Latitude E6230. Battery compartment's not that big. Like, this battery right here, I just pulled it out. It's roughly the size of maybe a small stick of dynamite.
Well, like I said, it doesn't take much to actually take down a plane.
It doesn't.
To blow out. For example, here's a more normal-sized Dell. This is a Latitude.
That's a Latitude E6410, if I'm not mistaken.
It's 6510. It's an E6510.
I was close.
And let's pop its battery out. It's going to
that battery, if I'm not mistaken, it's about twice the size of the one I have here.
I'd say if I can get the thing out. Release.
The point I was going to go with is that the battery of that particular
dynamite.
Yeah. The point I was going to go with was that the battery size of that particular Latitude is massive. It's about 1/3 the size of that laptop.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty chunky and weighty battery. You can get a decent sized brick of C4 in an enclosure that size. So I do think they intentionally picked that particular laptop as their picture for this article. Does make quite a bit of sense.
Yep.
Because that's the kind of laptop you do have to worry about. Even more so if it was like, say, some of the other mobile workstation laptops, or say my Alienware with that honkin' 93 watt-hour laptop battery.
Mm-hmm. I could think of a few laptops that have. My old Armada has 2 battery slots, and they are huge.
Yeah. Well, let's get off laptop airplane terrorism and move on to something funnier.
Okay.
The Apple patent of the week.
Oh, this thing, which actually I think is kind of clever. If they can make it work.
if Apple can make this work, I will applaud them, because this would be like the first legitimately clever thing they've done in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely more clever than a watch.
Yes.
So what this is it's a laptop shell that where the trackpad would be is a cavity that you would stick an iPhone in, and according to the patent, the laptop shell would then use the iPhone guts to power this laptop. If I remember... Go ahead.
I saw this earlier this week and was actually quite amused by it. Because at this point, iPhones and just smartphones in general have gotten powerful enough that if they were put into such a caddy, you could almost equate it to being a very low-end laptop, but still quite usable.
Is this the part where I take the cheap shot against the straight-up MacBook?
Yeah, go ahead, take that cheap shot.
It would easily be more powerful than the standard MacBook.
But
it's just too easy.
I know. Going after low-hanging fruit.
I still don't understand why. It'd be almost expensive though, because I mean, you gotta buy the, however much this would be, $300 shell, plus a $700 iPhone.
Oh, that's what they're up to now? $700 for an iPhone?
Oh yeah.
Oof.
You know what the scary thing is? We'll get to the prices of iPhones later, because we do have an article on that later on the show. Stay tuned. Don't hit the pause button. but I now distracted myself.
Yes, you did.
I want you to think back for a minute though. Do you remember about 3-4 years ago when Motorola did the same thing?
Actually, no, I can't.
Oh, I remember something and you don't. Hooray! Motorola actually had this very same concept with one of their Droid lines. It was actually the last Droid that kept the Droid name before it just became a punchline. Rest in peace, Droid. You were so much more.
Rip.
Yep. And what it was that it was, and I hate using this as an example constantly, but
we love picking on that laptop.
Well, the reason I'm going to use this one as an example, the Dell Latitude E6230, is A, because it's within arm's reach, and B, because that same dock actually did have a chunk of the laptop sticking out towards the rear. And what the Motorola did was that the Droid phone would then lock into the back on a slot, and then power the rest of the laptop. And at the time, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Except I don't want to use a laptop running flippin' Android. And wouldn't that thing just get really loose back there? What if something goes wrong back there?
Oh, okay, I just looked it up and went, okay, that thing.
Now you remember.
Now I remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that thing was really expensive. That was like a $300 dock, too, wasn't it? Might even been more now that I think about it.
Well, it looks like still new. It's just sitting at $400. So, yeah, it's
Ow!
really expensive. That's probably why I never paid attention to it, because it's like, why would I go buy this thing? I'd just get a regular laptop for that.
No, it was stupid at the time. I can see Apple making it work, however. Just because, first off, iOS is much more efficient than Android.
Yes.
It's the sad truth. The other thing is that using the iPhone as the trackpad does help cut down on costs.
Yep.
So this accessory can be cheaper. I would say a normal company would probably charge 100 to 150 for it. I could see Apple charging 300 for it.
Yes.
At $150 Apple logo markup.
Yep. Where I get a little worried is can iOS distinguish between being used on a phone? Can it distinguish the difference between a phone and a laptop? Because the two have completely different uses in the tech world and how you use the thing day to day. That's where I worry. That's what caused Windows 8 to fail dramatically.
Well, Windows 8 had a whole other slew of problems, which is why it failed at life.
Yes, but it's big thing that I was reading about was that it pretty much treated desktop and laptops, which are great at content production, and treated them like they were tablets, which are great at content consumption.
That was one of the many. This isn't about Windows 8 though. Windows 8 has a lot of problems. The thing is that I'm willing to bet that without the iPhone in it, this thing is not going to work on its own. And besides, this is just a patent. Apple has come up with all sorts of really nifty, neato patents that have never gone anywhere, and usually they just use these patents as a way to exactly garbled up regret the van to be patent trolls.
For shame, because if Apple actually did something with it, I would seriously consider, if it worked well, playing with it. And hey, who knows? This thing works really well. It's a low-end laptop. Go ahead, pick it up. Smartphone laptop combo in one.
Well, I'm strongly considering switching over to iPhone just because of the OS being more stable. Android has just been kind of really getting me annoyed. Or maybe they'll finally figure out everything they need thanks to the newly exposed Android O.
Or you could always just go and get a new phone.
Yeah, I could just get out of Samsung. That might be the answer. But maybe Android O will give me all of the answers. So, it is confirmed, to the surprise of no one, that there is in fact going to be an Android O after Android N.
Well, then if we're going down the alphabet, then well, yeah.
All right. First things first. What do you think Android O is going to be? I'm going to go with Oreo. What about you?
I think Oreo is probably going to be the best bet. Right in the background of the picture of the banner ad at the top has Oreos in the background.
Oh, hey, look at that. It actually does. I didn't realize that until I started. Well, here's the thing. The title says O is for oatmeal. And then you scroll down on this article, and it just slowly exposes a box of Oreos. I didn't even notice that. All right.
That and Android have always been named after something dessert sort of related.
Well, yes, and to be fair, N was one that I don't think anyone would have guessed.
Actually, what was N?
Nougat.
Okay.
Yeah. I thank God I was wrong on that one. Because I guessed Nutella. And then I would have been sad forever.
Okay.
But in any case, this article, which I thought had a list of features, apparently does not, which is really, really sad.
Yeah. The article
But,
is pretty much stating we're in development, the developer's preview, which is neat that you can that the stuff is sort of available, that you can get your hands on it to mess around with the operating system and hopefully learn quirks, expose new bugs, open beta stuff.
All right, I found a list. Didn't have to go too far. All right, for some of the big... Right off the bat, I love this first one. I'm just going to go on the list. I haven't read this in advance. Right off the bat, we have background limits. Android will be able to restrict certain activities as an application waits.
Okay, that's useful.
Right off the bat, we're going hard into... Please stop working in the background and save the battery for the love of God. I can't even count how many times I put my... Though lately my Galaxy S6 Edge Plus has been just deciding that going to sleep mode in my pockets for suckers, and within the span of 3 hours, my battery goes from 80% to 20%. And
that sounds about right. Whereas in my case, my phone just goes, living's for suckers, and will just commit suicide at a random battery percentage.
Yeah, it's getting annoying.
But we also know that my phone has a compromised battery, so...
Yep.
Time for new phones all around.
Mine does not. It's just bad. I have a compromised OS, is my problem. Or just problems in general. Notification channels. Android O is introducing new notification channels, grouping notifications together by their type. I have no idea what that means.
That's interesting because, well, at least like my tablet does it, my smartphone doesn't, unfortunately. Is that I'll see like, oh, you have all these emails, you have these videos, and you have these Twitters, but it doesn't fill up the taskbar with icons. It just kind of goes, well, here you go.
It means in the top area where you pull down to show notifications, that it might just group them up into clusters that there's too many of them, is what it looks like. So if you are a foolish fool and have Clash of Clans, it'll just shove that off into its own little corner, put that at the bottom sort of affair, I would assume. Mm-hmm. Keep important things like weather alerts at the top, news alerts under that, game alerts even further down that. An alert above the game alert saying uninstall Clash of Clans. While you're at it, uninstall Candy Crush. Go get a real Bejeweled clone, or better yet, get Bejeweled. Stop playing Candy Crush, please, for the love of God. We have autofill APIs. It's pretty much exactly as it sounds. APIs for the developers to use autofills. Which, hooray!
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if that means it's going to also utilize things like, okay, you can use an autofill if it'll take like a thumbprint as an add layer of security. That'd be nice. But we'll see. This is all early developer stuff. We'll get more details down the road. Font resources in XML. Adaptive icons. All for wide gamut color for apps. Connectivity. Android will bring some changes in the way our devices communicate with each other. High quality Bluetooth audio. Neighborhood Aware Network, or NAN for short. Telecom framework. All kind of interesting behind the scenes sort of things. Keyboard navigation. Native keyboard support is coming into Android. It is no longer going to be shoehorned in. This comes because of the death of Chromebooks.
Yep. Which means that Android is actually a very is that much closer to actually doing something with that Apple patent that we saw and actually being worth it.
A audio API for Pro Audio, WebView enhancements, Java 8 APIs, and more.
Mm-hmm.
So already, I mean, just right off the bat, some of the background limitations. Already, finally, thank God, we're going to try and save the batteries. As long as Samsung doesn't destroy them.
Yeah, and then get banned off of airplanes for terrorist concerns.
Again,
yeah.
That actually does raise a good question. Do you think with, already Samsung is working on finally making a battery that does work inside the Note 7 and sending out refurbished models of the Note 7 with actual working batteries finally.
Mm-hmm.
Are they still going to be banned on planes?
Probably, just out of because repealing a ban for an item like that, it's
extremely unlikely.
Extremely unlikely. The airlines are going to be incredibly nervous, even though it's now a working product. They're not going to trust it.
All right, let's talk iPhones.
Oh boy.
So, 2 changes have happened to the Apple actually just kind of silently dropped quite a few updates. Which, not unlike Apple, but at the same time kind of unlike Apple. No press announcement, just kind of happened. And the thing that's actually kind of more surprising to me is that if you go to the Apple's homepage, the more minor of the updates is the one that stands out. And that is the new iPhone 7 Red. Product Red phones, if you don't know, are items that are intentionally made to have a red design to them.
Mm-hmm.
And their sole purpose in life is to cost a little bit more, and that extra markup goes to help AIDS research.
Okay.
That's the gimmick.
Just like the Earth Day Priuses with the blue ring on the Toyota and the Toyota emblem.
Sure, why not?
Yeah,
except it's a phone. These phones cost $100 more. The low end iPhone 7 starts at $749 instead of $649, and the 7 Plus, the real phone of them, starts at $869 instead of $769. There's one problem I have with this phone.
Okay.
Why is the front faceplate white?
I actually don't see that as an issue.
Can you imagine how much better that would look if it was black?
It would look a lot sharper as black, but white does work there as well, and it does keep that Apple's chic modern feel.
It just clashes to me. It really does. Then again, I absolutely love black with red accents. I absolutely do. That's pretty much my only problem. I've got no problem with this.
No, it looks very modern, very Apple.
Well, the more Apple thing is the fact that there's no headphone jack. But enough.
Yes, that is Apple.
Enough cheap shots. The other thing that dropped, but is basically silent, is the iPhone SE got an update. Now, if you don't... We're on the next page now.
Yeah.
If you don't know, the How the iPhone lineup works is that we have the iPhone 7 Plus, which is the top tier phone, the iPhone 7, which is the more modern 4.7 inch. Then we have the last generation phones, the 6S Plus and the 6S. And then we have the SE, which is modern guts in the old 5-inch body.
Okay. I'm looking at it, and it looks nice.
Yeah. The update here is that they silently changed the capacity. It used to be 16 and 64 gigabytes. It is now 32 and 128. So storage capacity went up. In addition, the processor also went up. It is now using an A9 just like the rest of the phones except for the two new ones. And as far as I can tell, and I'll be pretty blunt, I don't keep tabs on these things a whole lot, even though I should. The price did not change. So your bottom tier phone for Apple, your iPhone SE, is now back up to par with the rest of them. Hooray!
Good for you, Apple. You've pretty much kept your line within spec of each other.
Yes. Now let's talk about what fell out of spec. The bigger change that happened, though, is the iPad. Mainly due to the fact there is now a product called the iPad again.
That existed? What? iPad went away?
For the longest time, the iPad lineup used to be iPad Mini, iPad Air, and iPad Pro.
Okay, so they didn't actually have just an iPad. Goes to show how much
there was not an iPad.
Apple. Okay,
they had iPad adjective.
All right, so I figure in this one it would fit in the place of, you said that the iPad Air had been discontinued. I'd figure this would just fit in its place. We would get the iPad Pro sitting at the top, iPad sitting in the middle, and then the iPad Mini sitting at the bottom.
Yes and no. I mean, first off, a moment of silence for the kind of badly named iPad Air. Okay, I don't care enough.
Yep. Moving on.
Yep. So let's move on to the other page. So, yes and no, the iPad takes the place of the iPad Air. Here's how it works now. You have the 12.9-inch iPad Pro at the top, which if you get, I will make fun of you. You then have, after that, the 9.7-inch iPad Pro, which, in my opinion, is the top tier usable iPad. Because 13-inch tablet.
That's pretty big. What's interesting is capacity. Oh, okay. The smaller iPad Pro has a 32 gigabyte option, whereas the 12-inch does not.
It does and doesn't. So actually getting to...
Oh, okay, Wi-Fi and cellular. Helps if I look at the right heading.
Yes. The 13-inch iPad Pro, the 32 gigabyte one is still at $800. 128 gigabyte exists at $900, and then the 256 gigabyte version is at $1,000. If you want Wi-Fi and cellular, there is no 32 gigabyte option. There is only the 128 gigabyte option at $1,030 and 256 at $1,130. But you're talking about a massive tablet that is unwieldy. I do highly recommend, before you purchase it, first, sit down, contemplate, and then actually go to a store and try lifting one and try using it casually. You will find out that it is very top-heavy. The 9.7-inch iPad Pro sits at 32 gigabytes for $600, 128 for $700, 256 for $800.
Yeah, and the successive versions, like the Wi-Fi cellular, goes up to 730, 830, 930, respectively.
Yep. What's fascinating is what happened on the low tier.
Yes, I noticed. Why?
The iPad Mini 4, which you would think is the low end, only has the 128 gigabyte model now. So 400 for Wi-Fi and 530 for Wi-Fi and cellular at 128 gigabyte capacity, which, granted, you're now at the capacity where you can store video. But on the other hand, what the bleep?
Yeah, I noticed that. It's like, okay, you got all these nice options, nice options, and then it just falls off with the inexplicable mid-tier option as your only option on the low tier. It's just weird.
Yeah, and then the iPad, because they don't want to use a 64 gigabyte chip, only has 32 and 128 gigabyte options. 32 gigabyte is $329, which, not that bad, actually, for an Apple product.
No, it's a reasonable price for a tablet.
I mean, it's about mid to high tier costs in the Android world, so not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
128 gigabyte for 430, and then Wi-Fi and cellular, you could probably guess 460 for the 32 and 560 for the 128. Power wise, gets interesting. The two Pros are still using the A9X, so they're actually a generation behind on the processor still. The new iPad, just iPad, has a regular A9 in it, so it doesn't have that GPU boost that the Pros do, but the CPU is still the same. The Mini still uses an A8. They haven't brought that one up to the A9 level.
Yeah.
So, if you want the condensed version of what I would say to do, ignore the iPad Mini.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist in my world now. It used to be a good option. Well, actually, here's the other thing to consider. The iPad Mini does have the anti-reflectant coating. iPad does not.
Yeah, I noticed that it's inconsistent across the board as to what things have, what things don't have.
Yeah, this is still a huge mess. They still haven't brought the issues where the 9.7-inch iPad Pro actually has a better display than the 13-inch iPad Pro. The 9.7 is still a superior pick in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah.
The iPad Mini still has a more pixel-dense display, but you're still kind of at that PPI where you're over 220, you're fine. Your earballs will not be able to comprehend the difference.
Pretty much. It is just a unmitigated mess. Just, wow.
But at least there's a cheap way in. You do have a 32 gig iPad to pick.
Yep. And at least all of them have that fingerprint resistant oleophobic coating. Whatever the hell that is.
It means that you can spray it with Windex. You know, like every tablet that isn't made by China Corp.
Pretty much.
If your tablet costs more than $50, it has this. So, this concludes the announcements made by Apple. What's that? You were expecting me to talk about the super gimmicky Apple Clips thing that they also announced?
No.
You ignorant fool. Of course not. I'm not going to talk about some stupid automated video editing nonsense. You want to go be Snapchat, do on your own time. I literally couldn't even sit through a video of CNET trying to explain to me what it was. I was so bored. So yeah, Apple did make Apple Clips. I couldn't care less. With that, I'm going to move on to something you probably don't care less. You could care less about, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway because it is absolutely fascinating. And that is ARM's dynamic architecture, or DynamIQ. I'm going to give you the short version of this because we have roughly 9 minutes left.
Well, I hope you give me the short version of it, because after I scrolled down about 2 paragraphs, the website goes, stop using an ad blocker, and everything else becomes illegible.
Oh, wow, it does that for me too. Look at that. So, everyone's talking about how this particular dynamic or microarchitecture could bring a new level in AI and machine learning. But let's give you the long story short. Normally, when you build any sort of computer and you're using multiple CPUs, the CPUs have to be what's called synchronous for them to work with each other. ARM, in doing their system on a chips, they do use asynchronous processors, but they can't talk to each other. So, for example, in my Samsung phone, it uses asynchronous processors. It has a quad-core low-powered one and a quad-core high-powered one. And if it's using one, the other is off. And it goes back and forth. Dynamic gets around this. It allows those various processors. You could have a single core at 4 gigahertz, or a 12-core processor at 800 megahertz, all communicating at the same time.
And, okay, I'm looking at that going, it's like, that actually seems like a really simple problem to solve. Is that you have each address pretty much a page space in memory, and that's where they all write something. If they want to talk to another processor, they just write something into the page space, and the other processor comes and retrieves it.
That's quite possibly how it works. However, considering the fact that I am not a CPU engineer, nor do I have the time to quickly learn how to be one, and Lord knows if I did do that, I would not be here. And also, my brain may or may not have just been fried after quickly doing that. That could be how it works. I don't know the intricacies of how it works.
That's just what I just threw out would be my guess.
I don't even want to try and guess.
Because I actually don't know if ARM has memory... how much memory management commands ARM has, whereas x86 has some very specific memory management commands, including one of them which pretty much a processor can lock an address, and any other processor that tries to address it gets told no.
It's hard to say.
It is.
Especially since the Inquirer here wants me to show a metric ton of ads in order to go through this article. And quite frankly, I'll be real honest, I just listened to Ryan Strout for about an hour explain it from PC Per.
Yeah, who is probably quite capable of explaining how this particular processor works.
He's kind of a GPU and CPU nerd. With like 17 E's in the word nerd.
And the credentials probably to back it up.
No. Just nerd.
Alright.
He's our lead benchmarker.
Okay.
So we only got 5 minutes left. I want to actually just skip all the way to the end of our thing, and let's just end on a silly note.
Oh,
The self-driving food delivery robot.
which I can't actually even look at the article because it's just went. You've got an ad blocker.
Yeah.
No, I will not turn the ad blocker off.
Yeah, I turned mine off because, yeah, someone had to. But here's how it's going to work. Currently, this service is only available in Redwood City in California.
Isn't that where most of the cool tech services are?
That's pretty much the beta testing for everything Skynet. Let's be real honest, this is one step closer to Skynet. It starts off as innocently delivering you a slice of pizza.
So Skynet now knows I love crab ragoon. Okay.
And so does all 12 of our listeners.
Yeah.
And then they'll tell 12 other people. And then nobody will care.
I have nobody why anybody would care that I like crab ragoon, but whatever.
I guarantee you Amazon does. And Google.
Okay, yes, creepy Uncle Google and creepy Aunt Amazon would probably love to know that I love crab ragoon, so they can suggest nearby Chinese places for me.
Yup.
Which is probably what I'll be having for dinner.
But yes, the bots are from Starship Technologies, and they are being used through a delivery startup called DoorDash. We'll be using these self-driving robots to deliver goods. It'll be using several different proximity sensors throughout the entire perimeter of the robot within two insulated compartments on it, and the robot will only open with the proper NFC code transmitted from your phone when put up against it. It's also cameraed up to the wazoo.
Yeah. Because the thing doesn't look that big. It's about the size of a large dog, or medium-sized dog. Looks from the picture. You could easily go up to the thing and pick it up and walk off with it.
The thing only weighs actually, I want to say 25 pounds.
Yeah, so you could just walk off with it, and it really couldn't do anything about you walking off with it.
No, there are, during the initial test phases, there will be human drivers operating the thing remotely like an RC car. There is also a GPS equipped on it, obviously.
Mm-hmm. I just had the thought of, I've done my tour as a pizza delivery driver. I would have actually loved to have just sit there in a little cubicle thing, just with the joystick, with a controller in my hand, just piloting the thing around. That would have made my job so much better there.
And on the note of, speaking of creepy young Google, it has also given me an advertisement specifically to go sign on for a trucking company I tried to sign on to. And so, on that note, it's time for us to go. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find me at twitch.tv/eagle_falcon. You can find Regret the Van at twitch.tv/Regret_the_van. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye!